People say daughters are safe when they get married, but that's not true. My daughter was dying slowly in a house full of walls, and no one could hear her scream. Until one night she called me, and that phone call changed everything. I'm Richard Morrison. I'm 64 years old. I live in a small house just outside Chicago. I worked as a high school teacher for 35 years. After retirement, I started spending more time in my garden. Life was peaceful, simple. And then my daughter Claire got married. Claire was the only child we had. Me and my wife Susan loved her more than anything in this world. She was bright, kind, soft-spoken. She never made trouble. Always listened. She dreamed of becoming a writer, but she gave up everything when she married Thomas. Thomas Warner, a tall, handsome man. Good job, nice car, polite smile. He used to come to our home with flowers for my wife and chocolates for Claire, the kind of guy any father would trust. But today, I hate myself for trusting him. Their wedding was beautiful. Claire wore a white dress with a long veil. Susan cried when she walked down the aisle. I was just smiling. I didn't know that I was giving my daughter's hand to a monster. The first few months after the wedding, everything seemed okay. Claire would call us once a week. She sounded happy, maybe a little tired, but I thought that was normal. Then the calls became shorter. She stopped visiting, and when I asked her, she just said, "Dad, Thomas is busy. We're just settling into the new place." I believed her, because that's what fathers do. We believe in our children. And we want to believe they're happy. One Sunday morning, I saw Claire's old diary in her bedroom. I was just cleaning the room, but when I opened it, the last page read, open quote, "If I disappear one day, it won't be an accident. I'm trying to smile every day, but my heart hurts. No one sees it. Not even Thomas," close quote. That was the first time I felt something was very wrong. I called her that evening. "Claire, are you okay?" I asked. Her voice was soft. "Yes, Dad, I'm okay." But I wasn't convinced. So I asked again, "Sweetheart, are you happy with Thomas?" There was silence. Then she whispered, "Dad, I'll call you later." And she hung up. 3 days later at 11:47 p.m. my phone rang. It was Claire. She was crying, "Dad, Thomas," and the call dropped. I froze. Susan looked at me. "What's wrong?" I didn't say anything. I just grabbed my coat, car keys and drove to their house. When I reached there, the front door was open. Inside, the lights were dim. I called out Claire's name. No response. Then I heard something, a soft, sobbing sound. I walked towards the bedroom and saw Claire sitting on the floor, hugging her knees, her face full of fear. Her arm had bruises. There was blood on her lip. And then I saw Thomas standing behind her with a whiskey bottle in his hand. He looked at me and said, "She's mine. Don't interfere, old man." That was the first night I wanted to kill a man, but I didn't. I took Claire by the hand and brought her to my house. Susan wrapped her in a blanket and cried the whole night. Claire didn't say a word. She just sat in silence. The next morning, I tried to talk to her. "Claire, what happened? Tell me everything." But she shook her head. "Dad, I don't want to talk." It took 2 days for her to open up, and when she finally did, I felt like someone had stabbed me in the chest. Thomas had been beating her for months, not with fists always, but with words, with threats, with silence. He would lock her in the room if dinner wasn't ready. He'd call her stupid, useless, fat. He took her phone away for days. She wasn't allowed to see her friends. One time, he pushed her down the stairs. She had a miscarriage, and he blamed her. She never told us because she said she didn't want to fail her marriage. I was shaking with anger. Susan cried quietly beside me. But Claire looked at me with empty eyes and said, "Please don't do anything, Dad. I don't want more trouble." More trouble? That man destroyed her life, and she was still scared of making trouble? I knew then, this wasn't just a bad marriage. This was war, and I was ready to fight. Some scream, some whisper, but all deserve to be heard. The next day I went to a lawyer. I showed him pictures of Claire's bruises. We recorded her statement. And we filed for a restraining order. Thomas was served papers 2 days later, and guess what he did? He came to my house. He stood outside shouting, "You think you can take her away from me? She's my wife." I didn't open the door. I just called the police. They arrested him for violating the order, but he got out on bail the next day. Claire was scared. "Dad, he'll find a way to hurt me," she said, but I told her, "Not while I'm alive." She moved in with us. She started therapy. Slowly she began writing again. She smiled more, but the fear in her eyes, it was still there. One night, I saw her standing at the window, just looking outside. I walked up and asked, "You okay?" She said, "Sometimes I still hear his voice." I didn't know what to say, so I just held her hand and said, "You're safe now." But deep inside, I knew, until Thomas was behind bars, truly behind bars, Claire would never feel safe. 1 week later, we found a camera. Hidden inside a gift box Thomas had sent her on her birthday. He was spying on her, recording her, even now, even after the restraining order. I took the camera to the police. They opened a new case. This wasn't just domestic abuse now, this was criminal harassment. I was there in court when the judge looked at Thomas and said, open quote, "Mr. Warner, you are charged with domestic abuse, miscarriage due to assault, and illegal surveillance. You will remain in custody until your trial." Close quote. Claire cried when she heard the words. She finally felt safe. People think when the abuser is arrested, the story ends, but that's not true. For my daughter Claire, the real war had just begun, because even though Thomas was in jail, he still had ways to reach her. After the court hearing, we came home. Claire was quiet during the drive. She looked out the window, holding her arms tightly across her chest. Susan sat in the back seat, whispering prayers. That night, as we sat for dinner, Claire finally spoke. "Dad," she said softly, "what if he gets out?" I put my spoon down and looked her in the eyes. "If he gets out, I'll make sure the world knows what he did." She didn't answer. She just nodded. But I could see it in her eyes. The fear was still alive. A few days later, we started getting letters. No name on the envelope, no return address, inside small pieces of paper, just a few words each. "You can't hide her forever. She's mine. You'll regret this." My hands shook every time I opened one. The police said they were investigating, but nothing moved fast. So I installed cameras around our house, changed our phone numbers, hired a private investigator. I had never been this protective. Not even when Claire was a baby. But now I had to be. Because this time, monsters were real. One morning our lawyer called. "Richard," he said, "Thomas is trying to get bail again. He's telling the court Claire is lying. He's calling it revenge for a failed marriage." My blood boiled. But then the lawyer said something that made my heart sink. The court wants Claire to testify again, in person. Claire was in the kitchen when I told her. She went pale. "No," she said, "I can't face him. I can't stand in front of him again." I said nothing, because I didn't want her to go through that again either. But we had no choice. The night before the hearing, she sat in her room alone. I knocked, walked in slowly, and sat on the edge of her bed. She was holding a childhood photo of us, the one where I held her hand on her first day of school. "I wish you could speak for me tomorrow," she said. "I wish I could too," I replied. Then she looked at me, not as my little girl, but as a woman trying to become strong again. "I'll do it," she said, "for myself, and for every woman like me." The courtroom was packed the next morning. Thomas sat behind his lawyer, dressed in a clean suit, trying to look innocent. But I could still see the evil in his eyes. Claire walked to the witness stand. Her hands trembled as she took the oath, and then she spoke. She told everything. The bruises, the words, the nights of crying alone, the miscarriage, the spying camera, the threats. She didn't cry. She didn't stop. And when she finished, the room was completely silent. Even the judge took a deep breath before speaking. "This court believes Miss Claire Morrison has shown great courage. The accused, Thomas Warner, will remain in custody without bail. Trial will proceed, and if found guilty, he will serve a full sentence." Claire turned around and looked at me. This time she smiled. Not the fake smile. Not the scared smile. A real one. And I knew in that moment she had just taken her life back. Months passed. The trial began, and finally, after weeks of statements, evidence, and testimony, the verdict came. Guilty. Thomas Warner was sentenced to 11 years in prison. Outside the courthouse, Claire hugged me tightly. "Dad," she whispered, "thank you for never giving up on me." I couldn't speak. I just held her. That day I realized something. I wasn't just her father-in-law in this story. I became her shield, her voice, her witness, her hope. Today, Claire lives in a new apartment. She's writing again. She even teaches writing at a community center for women who've survived abuse. She tells them her story. She tells them our story. And every time I see her laugh freely again, I feel like I finally did something right as a father. Because I didn't raise her to be quiet. I raised her to be strong. And when she couldn't stand, I stood for her.